Okay, we are live, and welcome to the regular Saturday night Lovecraft eZine video show. And we haven't had one of these in a few weeks, but we do usually do a midnight show every Saturday night, most Saturday nights, let's put it that way, midnight Eastern time. And I haven't said this in a while, but what kind of got me started on this was, I've always loved like listening to guys like Art Bell. Not that I listen to him a lot, but when I could, like you're laying in bed in the middle of the night and you're hearing people talk on the radio about all these weird paranormal stuff, and so I thought, okay, we'll do that. Only it'll have a video component, and we'll talk about Lovecraft instead. So that's what this is.
Wait, what did I get myself into here?
Yeah, You're still not getting paid. I'm sorry. I can't even pay myself. No. Okay, so we could talk about other things, but the main thing I want to talk about is, so I see this article. I forget where. I linked to it on the Lovecraft eZine Facebook page yesterday about how Guillermo, if I'm saying his name right, del Toro, says he's okay now with doing Mountains of Madness with a PG-13 rating instead of an R rating. So a couple of things strike me right away. First of all, I don't understand why he was such a stickler for the R rating in the first place, because I think you can do a damn good Mountains of Madness movie with the PG-13 rating. There's a lot of movies that are quite horrific and scary with the PG-13 rating. So that's the first thing that strikes me. The other thing that struck me was an awful lot of people commented, and some of them were like, yeah, I'm glad he's sticking with this project, and other people were like, God damn it, Del Toro, you caved to the studios, which, maybe I'm a glass half full kind of guy, but I'm glad that there's a Mountains of Madness movie out there that could possibly get made. That's the way I look at it, and would probably be pretty decent, in my view. I do think that Del Toro is a bit overrated and overhyped, but I also think that he really loves the material, so he'd probably do a good job. At least I hope he would. I've been disappointed in a few of his movies. So those are my initial thoughts. I mean, what are you guys thinking about it? Good.
Well,
I was going to let Pete go first, but
I guess I have to, huh? If you think about it, Pacific Rim was the first movie he did since Hellboy 2.
yeah, that sounds right.
Well, he did that Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, didn't he?
Don't be
He
afraid
was
of
the
the dark.
producer on that. He didn't direct.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Maybe I better Google why. Go ahead and talk. I'm going to Google.
And before that, the movies that I know and I really enjoyed from Del Toro are some of his early films, Kronos, and frankly, I really, really like Mimic. And
Yeah.
those are the two that set him up. Now, since then, I think he's dealt more with dark fantasy, whether it be Hellboy, Hellboy 2, or Pan's Labyrinth. And then this Pacific Rim, I don't know that he hasn't done a horror piece in a long time. And if you try and wipe out everything that he just was producer on, and just look at what he directed, it's not a bad run.
Yeah, I'm looking at a list now. Kronos, Mimic, The Devil's Backbone, Blade 2, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy 2, Pacific Rim.
Yeah. It's not a lot. He's not churning out films.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let me ask you guys this then. Why do Lovecraft fans look at this guy as the second coming? I'm not being a jerk here.
No.
I'm not trying to be sarcastic. Is there something that I'm missing?
Well, Hellboy has some Lovecraftian overtones to it.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
liked him a lot.
And Hellboy 2, if you're careful and you watch the bazaar scene, there's a couple of old ones walking across in the background.
Right. Yes, it's
Star,
correct.
star-headed old ones.
Star-headed old ones.
Okay.
Um, but so he clearly loves the material.
Is that it? Because he's the only Hollywood director out there that's saying, "Hey, I'm a big Lovecraft fanboy."
He's well, there are others.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ridley Scott
Yeah.
and John Carpenter
But,
and Roger Corman.
all right. Well, Roger Corman's too old to do it. I
And it's not going to
may have lost some of his.
Yeah.
There's a point at which you do go over the hill, and I think as a producer, at least, he hit that a long time ago.
Right.
Did Ridley
I would agree with you.
My memory's not good. Did Ridley Scott direct Prometheus?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty sure he did.
Which
Yeah, I know you didn't like it.
his version of Mountains of Madness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay, and John Carpenter, I mean, we've seen what he can do. I mean, if he said, "I want to do Mountains of Madness," I don't think everyone would get excited.
Well, first of all, it would be retreading old ground.
Yeah, he's done the thing. He doesn't have to go back to the Arctic for anything else.
Right.
Right.
Or the Antarctic, in this case.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so when you look at who's available, who's interested in the material, it's Del Toro who seems to be pushing it the most.
Well, Del Toro is good with special effects, regardless of what you think. He knows how to handle special effects well,
Yeah.
and how to handle Lovecraftian creations effectively. So he wouldn't be. I can't imagine him being a disastrous fit.
No.
At the Mountains.
Does Del Toro have more pull now that Pacific Rim is done? There's going to be a Pacific Rim 2, and it seems, I believe, that Pacific Rim did pretty well. Does he have more pull now?
You would think, but
that combined with him saying, "Hey, yeah, let's do Mountains of Madness PG-13." I mean, does that? I get tired of, and I don't want to do a show around hype, although I guess that's exactly what I'm doing. But it just does seem to me that with the success of Pacific Rim, and somewhat, and with Del Toro saying, "Yeah, we can do a decent movie at PG-13," that just seems to make it far more likely that a Mountains of Madness movie will get done at some point. I'm not saying.
Right. And I think, honestly, given the way that we do things these days, you make Mountains of Madness, you do it as a PG-13, you release it on DVD with an unrated director's cut.
Right.
And then it shows up on the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival or the Lovecraft Film Festival in New York, and as a major screening, and you'd be perfectly happy. I'd be perfectly happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. Go ahead,
Well,
Rick.
the gore factor in that story isn't that extreme if you depending on what changes are made. But I mean, it's mainly the guys who get killed with the dogs by the Shuggoths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one thing I wanted to say is I don't understand the screaming need for it to be R-rated. I mean, why? I don't recall any nude women in the story.
Are there women?
I don't recall any gore that just has to be R-rated gore. And I have access to a tool that many people do not have access to. And I don't want to give away my secrets, but I thought I would look up a list of PG-13 movies, and I'm using this Google thing, and So using this Google tool, I found a page at MoviePhone.com. PG-13 horror movies that prove the rating does not matter, and this is just one of many that I just pulled up instantly. Cloverfield was one example that they gave.
Okay.
PG-13 rating. I Am Legend, which I'm not fond of the movie, but it's a good point with the PG-13.
All right.
The Last Exorcism I have not seen, but I heard of it.
Wow, I did not realize that was PG-13.
Yeah,
Okay.
The Last Exorcism is a perfect example of the fear people have that a PG-13 effectively declaws a film that otherwise should be R-rated. Having been produced by Eli Roth and having the word exorcism in the title, horror fans assume this would be a hardcore movie. So when Lionsgate announced they were releasing it with a PG-13, horror fans threw their arms up. And then the film came out and was still creepy as hell with a number of cringe-inducing scenes.
Yep.
So, I mean, I could go on, and those of you who have access to this Google tool could do this as well. But I think it seems fairly obvious that you can have a damn good Mountains of Madness movie with PG-13 just from those few examples alone. You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't understand the goddamn you, Del Toro, you caved into the studios by saying you do it at PG-13. I'm just glad. I do think the guy's a bit overrated, but I also think that he can be a good filmmaker, and he, most importantly, he loves the material. So I think there's a really good chance with him saying, you know, let's do a PG-13 Mountains of Madness, that this could be a good movie. So.
Yeah, I'm looking at a similar list, and Insidious was PG-13.
I haven't seen that one yet. You keep telling me I need to see that.
Well, it's not Lovecraftian, but I think it's got some real chills in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this could go a long way. You're right. And frankly, if you do like I said, let them release it as a PG-13 and put it out as a unrated director's cut. You can get away with a lot with that. That means every adult wants to go buy it, right?
Yeah, and you remember the trick from that Hitchcock pulled in Psycho, where he did at least. I think I have this right. He did a nude scene or partially nude scene with Janet Leigh, and so they cut that. They said, "Oh, you can't do that." But using that, he got away with the other stuff that he really.
Right.
In other words, he asked for more than he really wanted.
Right. Well, you always ask for, if you want $1 million, you go and ask for 10.
Right. And those scenes, like you said, can be in the director's cut, or in the R-rated, or the extra scenes on the DVD.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, it's not like many of us don't own the 9-hour version of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
We're a sucker for it.
Right.
Yeah, film those scenes. I mean, you'll sell them. Again, I guess I am a glass half full kind of guy, but I didn't understand the reaction to, oh well, it's just totally screwed, and we're never going to get a good Lovecraft movie now, and I just don't see it. I think it will be. Now, that having been said, am I wrong in saying that Del Toro's a bit overrated? What do you guys think?
I think he's an effective special effects director.
Yeah, I have to say, when he's directed, he's doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other films that he's done that he's produced that haven't been top notch. But that's okay. You don't have to. Well, look, I like Roger Corman films, and Roger Corman's making films to make money and have fun. He's not making art. And sometimes you have to make a movie to pay the bills. And
Yeah,
then,
in other words, we should just judge him by the films he's directed, not by the ones he's produced, is what you're saying.
sure. But
Yeah.
also keep in mind that, sometimes you have to make a studio movie so that you have the money to make the movie you want to make.
Yeah.
And if he can produce a whole bunch of films that are money makers, and then he can take that money and do what he wants, then more power to him. I'm not gonna, I'm sounding a little like Harlan Ellison here.
Well, no, but it's right though. I would imagine he made a good paycheck on Pacific Rim too.
Yeah.
He snuck in some Lovecraftian elements into Pacific Rim, I thought at least.
Sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Did you guys like that movie? Do you like Pacific Rim?
I enjoyed it. I think it was a typical summer blockbuster. I think it's a nice. It's not the greatest movie ever made. I think it's a nice rebuttal to the Michael Bay movies.
Mm-hmm.
My son just got back from Transformers 4, and I said basically it was 2 hours and 45 minutes of giant things blowing up, and really didn't know what the story was about.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the whole Tom Cruise thing? I wonder if that's still in play, if it ever was in play at all. And if it does, it matter. Okay, let's assume for a second, since we're talking about At the Mountains of Madness, let's assume for a second that actually had some sort of basis in reality. Is that a terrible thing if Tom Cruise is in the movie?
Well,
depends if they rewrite the character. I mean, because the only guy I can see him playing would be Dr. William Dyer, the head of the expedition. He's the
Which in the end comes down to a character part. Maybe a little bit more than that. He's not old. I don't think he's old enough to play Dyer, and he's too old to play
Danforth.
Well, how old was Dyer? Cruise is in his 50s.
Yeah, but he doesn't look like he's in his 50s.
Well, he can though, and he's done a couple of
I suppose
slightly character parts. And in fact, even with this movie he's got out now, Edge of Tomorrow, he starts off as this real kind of wimpish, showboatish kind of jerk.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. But the other thing that the first 3/4 of that of the story right now is really just conflicts between the professors, and there's not a lot of action. You have to do a serious rewrite. You can't just take the script the way it is.
Yeah.
No, and right there you're going to get people bitching. But of course, we all know that a movie can't be like a book in a lot of cases, especially in that story. You have to have a damn good screenwriter.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it's going to have to be a period piece. You can't do that today. It wouldn't work today.
What were you going to say, Rick?
I was going to say the cosmic history portion of the novel is going to be summarized very quickly, probably.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
There were waves of aliens. The old ones were one, and maybe they'll give a nod or a name check to Mygo and Cthulhu Spawn, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talk about what the Shuggoths are and how they were created, but 5 minutes maybe for that scene.
Yeah, there's that scene in Aliens vs. Predator where they're reading the history, and they show flashbacks of the battles, and sometimes the Predators won and sometimes they lost, but it's not it's literally, like you said, 5 minutes of backstory.
Yeah.
It's going to need a rewrite to make it more action-oriented.
Or you may stretch out Shuggoths
Yeah.
running down caverns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what this really boils down to is that a lot of Lovecraft fans are being concerned about the wrong things. They're concerned about a PG-13 PG-13 versus an R rating. They're concerned about Tom Cruise. When I really don't care for the guy personally, but he is a good actor. Okay?
Well, okay.
And what the real concern is, what I was going to say is the real concern is should be the screenwriter. It has to be, this has to be adapted correctly.
And a movie can be can capture the spirit of the book by even if it makes a lot of changes.
Absolutely.
Just like, you know, one of the best adaptations of Dracula, it was the first Christopher Lee movie, and that took a lot of liberties if you really go and look at the stuff it did for budget reasons. You know, we no longer have a boat ride to England.
Mm-hmm.
There's a nice English couple living in Austria-Hungary to be victimized.
I think Pete is absolutely right too. It has to be a period piece. You know.
Yeah, and you know, I'm a little concerned, and the problem I would have with Cruise is not that he's not a good actor or that he's this giant personality.
Mm-hmm.
There's this whole thing that I think of as a star effect. And you know, I'll give you an example. When Mandy and I went and saw or sat down and watched Angels versus Demons,
Mm-hmm.
the Dan Brown movie, you know, Ewan McGregor shows up as the assistant to the Pope. Well, she and I turned to each other and said, he's the villain. You don't waste star power on character roles.
Right.
Some filmmakers do, like Hitchcock. But for the most part, if you're going to pay for somebody to be in your film, you want them to be in your film.
The only alternative to somebody like that not being the villain would be to be the extreme red herring.
Right.
Like Janet Leigh.
See my point. So the moment you put Tom Cruise into this film, you know he's going to make it to the end. He is going to be our character focal point throughout most of the movie. Therefore, my concern, my suspense, is kind of lacking because I know he's always going to be in the next scene. I know that he's going to get out. It's very much like if you think about Alien before Sigourney Weaver was a big star,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't know that she was going to be the one to end up alive at the end. Everyone thought it was going to be Tom Skerritt.
Yeah.
And he dies almost in the first 30 minutes.
I think more like the first hour.
Okay, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
So
You didn't know who was going to be left there.
Right. And by doing that, by getting character actors, and you know, looking back, Harry Dean Stanton, Yaphet Kotto, they're all great actors. They just weren't really well known to American audiences yet,
Mm-hmm.
or mainstream audiences. Harry Dean Stanton was doing, you know, independent film even back in the 70s. So, you know, to get actors like that and not being able to attach a star to any of them and saying, this is the guy that's going to make it through, kind of will add to that suspension of the building of suspense.
Do you need a star for a Mountains of Madness movie, and were there really any stars in Pacific Rim?
I would say no. I mean, you had good actors.
Yeah.
Even some right,
but you
like
didn't
the guy
have
who played
Tom
the
Cruise.
commander. I can't think of his name.
Idris Elba?
Yeah, the guy who played Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you didn't have a Tom Cruise type guy. So maybe you don't need. He just did that with Pacific Rim, is my point. So does he need a star for Mountains of Madness? You know,
No.
in order for it to be commercially successful. I mean.
No, I don't think so.
No, just let the monsters carry it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I remember when I watched Independence Day in the theater, reading an article the next day about it, and this was before Will Smith was a huge movie star. I think it was right after that he kind of really hit. But the point of the article was that it was a very successful film without any movie stars, the aliens, the plot was the star, you know. So
Yeah.
if Del Toro, what? Let me rephrase it. What other actors in Hollywood would you guys like to see if you had? Who would be on your wish list to direct a Mountains of Madness movie if not Del Toro? Who do you think would do a good job?
Oh, direct? Oh.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Christopher Nolan. Not that he'd ever do it, probably, but you know, he did Inception, and now he's doing this new sci-fi movie. I forget the name of it. That's coming out soon. Interstellar. That's what it is.
Yeah.
He would really want to tinker though with that plot. He
Yeah.
tends to tinker with everything he works with.
Well, like we said,
For good or for bad, you know.
to adapt to the big screen.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, the guy who just did Godzilla, who did Monsters beforehand, I can't think of his name.
Yeah, he would be very good. Because when they had the scene in the beginning when they found the leftover of the egg.
Gareth Edwards.
Yeah. I immediately thought of Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
And that vast cabin.
Right. Right. And you know that whole opening credit scene where, you know, there's partially redacted films and statements that really works with Mountains of Madness.
What really works? Sorry.
The opening of Godzilla has all this partially redacted paperwork and films and images, and hints at what's coming down the pike. That would really work well at the Mountains of Madness.
Would they need to extend it beyond where the novel ends?
Good question.
I was wondering, because it's not the most cinematic ending. Do they do something like you've done in stories, Pete, where guys go back to the United States and something is left over following them?
Right. I mean, that sets it up for the sequel. But yeah, either that or you cut it earlier.
Yeah.
You cut it when they're fleeing in the airplane, and they look back and they see something.
All right. And well, you may. I think they'll have to tell us what Danford sees.
Yeah.
I don't think he can get away with.
No.
Let's play devil's advocate a bit with what you said about the period piece. Although I do agree with you, Pete. What would you say, guys, both of you two, the people that say, well, why does it have to be a period piece? Why can't we set it in 2014 or so? Why is that a bad idea is a better question.
Well, one thing, since it's set in Antarctica, you really don't, as a period movie, it's not going to be that expensive to make. It's mainly clothes and, you don't have to do city streets, have cars running by. It's in a barren, unpopulated area.
Right, some tents and a bunch of old planes and dogs. The problem I have with doing it as a contemporary piece would be satellite phones, cell phones.
Yeah, you're not isolated.
You're not as isolated as before, and part of the suspense that builds in this movie in this book is how isolated from the rest of the world you really are in this point. And Lovecraft builds this up by talking to you at least for a few pages about the travel across the ocean and the training. Carpenter does this as well by talking about how the storm is coming in and we're being cut off and the radio's not working.
Right.
it would be. I would have a hard time suspending disbelief in a contemporary film where all the technology broke down and we were suddenly out of contact.
Do you guys think that people are less likely to see a period piece sci-fi / horror movie like this than a contemporary than that same film set now? I'm trying to think of similar examples.
Johnny Depp in Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true. I think that answers that question. I don't think it would be a detriment.
You know, when they're done right, Dracula and Frankenstein films are always period pieces, and they always do well.
And when they remade the Wolfman, they put it back even earlier than when it was made.
True.
Yeah.
And I like that adaptation. I like the second version of the Wolfman a lot.
Yep.
Say that again, Rick.
I like the second version of Wolfman a lot, even though they moved
Benicio del Toro version.
Hmm.
And then I was just talking about the other day, the remake of The Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
That's a damn good point, and that's a really fun movie too. I have to watch that again soon. Yeah, you're right. Actually, there are a lot of examples, and I don't think it would be a detriment. And I do feel like it would. Yeah, for all the equipment to set it in 2015 or thereabouts, for example, and for them to be properly isolated, so all the equipment goes out, the satellite phones, the internet, whatever, that stretches credulity a little bit.
Carpenter could get away with that in the Thing, because in the original Who Goes There, as well as in the movie adaptation, the Thing knocks out all the communications.
Well, and Carpenter had the sense to set it in 1982. Remember that?
But in the story, they were not isolated. They had a lot of communications, and they get knocked out. So it's just a higher level of communications got knocked out. We followed the overall outline of the story pretty well. Made it a little more violent. We had more casualties, but
Yeah. But today, I mean, what did we do a couple of years ago? Some woman had appendicitis, and she operated on herself with teleprompting assistance.
Oh God.
Something like that. She had to do her own surgery.
There were also, if you find these mountains, you're going to do a lot of reconnaissance first today that you wouldn't.
Right.
There'd be every aircraft in the world flying over that area.
Right. And the moment that
Nichols Hobbs is watching, and he makes the point on the message board that our knowledge is still far from perfect. And I'm certainly no expert, but I think it was a lot less perfect back then, and but I think the real reason is what Pete is saying, is about the isolation. No satellite phones, no emails are able to be, or it can be sent out, nothing like that. You're really isolated.
Well, and then the other thing is that when that first communication goes out in the book, and they say we have alien bodies, or I'm abbreviating it.
Right.
Okay. So if you're in the scientific community in 1930, that's, oh my God, that's incredible. Okay, let's mount an expedition. It'll take us a year to maybe 2 years to get up and running, just to get there. Now, first of all, if you were to do that, governments around the world would be flying planes into your state, your base, as well as media. But second of all, and Niels will probably back me up on this, you would never announce that. We don't do science like that anymore. if you're going to go out on a limb and say I have alien bodies, you're going to want to publish in a prestigious journal. This is going to make you. You're not going to break it on the news.
Yeah.
Announce it to the world. You will do the fine research, particularly on an event of this magnitude. Because if you're wrong, your career is over. So,
should we talk about the city a little bit and the challenges that a filmmaker would have to make that look right, make that work?
yeah, it's already been done.
So, it's going to be an ancient futuristic city.
It's the city of the Krell from Forbidden Planet. It's whatever movie that discovers some lost civilization. It's Atlantis. It's been done a dozen times. It just has to be someone's unique vision.
Well, but doesn't it also have to be done in such a way that
it's never been seen before?
No, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say that this feeling, you see this and you're like, and you get this, the guys in the story, they get this immediate sense of horror in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you can, for some reason, and I don't know why, I'm flashing back to the Doctor Who episode, Silence in the Library, where they pull back and it's just this immense world-covering city and library, and there's nobody there. It's an entire city that's supposed to be populated, and nothing's moving.
Right.
That's kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, rendering this kind of stuff and developing the creep factor isn't that hard.
And people miss the point, I think, when they talk about, the Shoggoth's got to look good. And, well, of course they've got to look good. I mean, come on. But that's not really the horror in this story. I mean, that's... the other horror is what you have to make happen, what you have to adapt correctly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of reminded of that joke that there are two types of people in this world. One that can extrapolate from data.
I don't know what the other kind is. I don't know.
I thought you froze for a moment.
But you see my point. I mean, you could hint, and I would hope that Del Toro or whoever did this would hint more than show in this film or in an adaptation, because I think that's important. I would love to just see half glances or half pieces of the Elder Things and Shoggoths. And don't get me wrong, I think Carpenter did a fabulous job in reinterpreting Shoggoths through John W. Campbell in The Thing. But it didn't have to go that way. I mean, I look at a lot of different kinds of Shoggoths out there. Yes, there are the shape-changing stuff, but you could also just look at, the 1988 version of the Blob.
Yeah.
This giant protoplasmic thing that just consumes.
Have you guys read Jack McDevitt?
Yeah.
His book, The Engines of God?
Yes. Yes.
And so you know what I'm saying there. For those who haven't read it, in The Engines of God, it's set about 200 years from now, and mankind has discovered faster than light travel, I think probably maybe 30 to 50 years previously to when the story is set. You know, so they're venturing out into the Milky Way somewhat, and they found basically a lot of empty worlds that can't sustain life. And they found several, like maybe like 3 worlds that used to sustain life. They're basically they become archaeological digs, and one other world that can sustain, you know, life. So there's not much out there. But the point is that what there is out there seems to disappear every 8,000 years or so. It seems like there's something out there that is not very amenable to intelligent life, and it gets rid of it every 8,000 years or so. And that's a pretty, and he hints at it. He doesn't really solve it in the book. I've got to read the rest of his books to see if he does, but I think it's really well done, and it reminded me of Lovecraft in a lot of ways. And I think of what a director has to do and what a screenwriter has to do, that hinting that you're talking about makes me think of that book.
Right. I'm trying to think. There's a story by actually it's a novel by Robert J. Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to look it up right here.
Sure, yeah, take your time. This is my first, my first hint that you don't have encyclopedic memory. So this is.
It's Calculating God.
Calculating God. Okay.
Calculating God.
I don't think I've read that.
It's basically this interstellar spaceship comes down and lands at the Museum of Natural History in the Royal Museum in some Canada. I can't remember the city. Might be Toronto, but I could be wrong. And this spider-like alien gets out, and you know, people think it's a stunt, but eventually it's not a stunt. But there's a reason he's landed there. It's because he wants to talk to a paleontologist, and because he's a paleontologist, he's studied the evolution of life on other planets, and of all the species they've studied and they've learned about have all had cataclysmic events at the same time in their histories.
Okay.
And our hero, the human paleontologist, is like, that's impossible. You know, these species are separated by millions of light years. They couldn't possibly be experiencing extinction events and
not
climatic,
naturally anyway, yeah.
all at a regular basis. And
right.
you know, and the alien says, well, there is one explanation. And the paleontologist is like, well, what? Well, it's God. And
that's one,
you know, you go, and so you get into this huge debate in this book about, you know, can you prove the existence of God through the study of not one species but all of these species?
Well, I haven't read the book, but it seems like all you can prove is that there's something out there that's really powerful.
Right, exactly.
You could make, because this reminds me of a recent Robert M. Price story, you could make the opposite argument. Proves the existence of the devil.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or someone that's as mean as the devil and pretty damn powerful. Yeah. It also reminds me of the game. We had the guy on that plays the main character in the game. I've trying to. My brain's doing that to me again. What's that trilogy? It's a video game where, like, every 50,000 years.
Was it Mass Effect?
Mass Effect. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. It reminds me of that too.
Right. Right.
I need to actually play that game because it sounds awesome.
So yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting, and I don't know how we got to this conversation right here, but it's, you know, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. You know, I've lost my train of thought.
Well, see, time, it's a weebly wobbly. Oh, that's never mind. Go on.
Yeah.
Let's stop. Let's stop. Let's stop it with the Doctor Who terminology.
I'm just trying to make sure that it's technically correct. Sorry.
Timey whiny. Come on. We're not David Tennant here. Oh, Mark Smith.
No, but apparently you're the War Doctor. You're shutting us down. Anyway.
Now, everybody in the audience can now line up the three of us and tell us which Doctor Who we are while you're watching the show. Okay. Anyway, go ahead, Pete.
Oh, I actually have to tell you a little funny thing. I wrote a whole story today, and I dropped in
Good. You keep that up.
Yeah, I dropped in this little tiny hint that links this story to Reanimators.
Okay.
And Mandy's doing the editing this evening, and she's like, "Where's this hint that you put in there?" And I said, "Oh, it's right here." And she's like, "You are such an uber geek. Nobody is ever going to figure that out." Then she stops. She says, "Wait, there's one person, Rick."
Yeah, Rick will figure it out.
Rick will figure it out.
What is this story about anyway?
It's a Roman mythos story. It's a mythos story set in the time of Vespasian.
Oh, okay.
Are you writing it for someone?
Yes, but I can't tell you anything about
it. Okay, all right.
Was he the guy who came after Nero?
I think he's a couple after Nero. Yeah, I think he's after the year of 4 emperors.
Right. I mean, I was thinking the immediate successor.
Yeah.
I know he would be after Nero. I know everybody up to Nero.
Okay. Yeah, he's 69 to 79.
No, but we got on the engines of God in similar stories because we were talking about the way that the director and the screenwriter has to hint at this.
Yep. Right.
How tiny humanity is, and on and so forth, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Has to really be done right, and it's going to be hard to translate the film.
Well, there might also be little throwaway things in the book which will be significantly enlarged in the film. For example, the old ones creating humanity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I can see that taking center stage.
Well, absolutely, because let's put this in the real world for a second, and science is making new discoveries all the time. All right, so what if we definitively found out, we found evidence that strongly suggested, let's go that route, that mankind was engineered by some alien species, or that, let's say, we were some kind of accident. I mean, can you imagine how people would react?
Well,
that's what this film is to get across, things like that.
Well, the thing is, do you keep it an accident, or do you or even if it is an accident, do you make it that, like in Prometheus, it looked like we were created by somebody else who has a plan for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Maybe it was a mistake, and they want to wipe out the mistake. It wasn't quite clear what the plan was, but it would be something like that.
I thought that could have been a good movie if they hadn't tried to shoehorn it into the alien thing, into the alien storyline.
Yeah.
I don't see why it has to be part of that storyline. Why can't it just be a movie into itself? And maybe that would have made it a better movie.
Because then Rick or somebody like him and I would have taken both stories and found a way to bridge them together.
Well, it was probably for box office, saying here's a prequel to Alien.
Right.
The commercial reasons for all these shared universes.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work out so well for them.
You want to hook a reader or a film goer, make a shared universe.
Right.
There's the geek factor. There's going to be somebody like me or Pete who's got to see everything.
Oh, yeah.
So there is some point where you do reach a saturation.
I said something about not everything has to fit together. I realized the blasphemy that I spoke to you guys immediately after I said it.
Yeah. Yeah, we forgive you.
Thank you.
It's not that everything has to fit together, but we have to try. Yeah. There has to be a world and a way that you can get King Kong, Godzilla, and the Avengers, as well as the Ronin warriors, all in the same universe, with Dracula, the werewolf, and the mummy.
And as a matter of fact, that's how Rick got onto this show. Speaking of things fitting together,
Right.
remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But when you see, like, I used to be this geek, like, I would buy everything that's interconnected, but I think we've reached a point where you bankrupt yourself,
Sure.
or you don't have the time, because just to use an example, since you know I'm a Dark Shadows fan, they have these audio dramas. They got an upcoming one where they're connecting, Big Finish is the company, they have a Dorian Gray series. Well, they're going to have Dorian Gray crossover with Dark Shadows. So I was wondering, should I, buy all their Dorian Gray audio dramas, which are not that many. Enough, but not that. It's not as bad as Doctor Who. But guess what? There's a Dorian Gray Doctor Who crossover. And they have more Doctor Who audio dramas probably than the entire series on television. There's no way I'm going to listen to all of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. Besides Tom Cruise, who else do we see as maybe some actors that would work for this film? Playing some of the other characters, assuming Cruise is playing Dyer.
Crispin Glover would make a great game for him.
Okay.
He would nail it.
What was he, Willard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's...
That's the first person that comes to mind. He's got that nervous personality, or at least that's how it appears. Who else?
Who's the guy that played in Watchmen? He was one of the former bad guy superheroes. Supervillain, sorry.
You mean the guy who was sort of like the Question?
The guy what?
The guy who was sort of he's got a name which
Rorschach.
Rorschach.
No, not Rorschach. The guy that
Moloch?
Moloch, yeah, Moloch. The guy that played him plays him.
Yeah, I like him. He's a little older now. He was originally in remember Stephen King's The Stand?
Yeah, he was in that.
Yeah, he was the firebug in that.
Right. Bumpity bump.
Yeah.
That's, in fact, every time I see that guy, I think of that role. I think him running around the stand going bumpity bump, bumpity bump.
I'm trying to think of who else. It wouldn't be too hard to get some. John Rhys Davies might do good as one of the professors.
Yeah, that's true.
How old is he now?
I don't know, but I just watched him in a brand new movie, and he looks young.
All right, so he still looks in good shape. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what happened on Lord of the Rings, but looks like it reversed some aging process.
Well, plus he's still got that Raiders of the Lost Ark vibe to a lot of people, so that would come in handy for
Which is funny because the film I watched him in was called Prisoners of the Sun, and they tomb raid an Egyptian pyramid.
Of course, see?
So, you had to throw him in there. Actually, Harrison Ford would work well as Professor Dyer. And that would be a fun little cameo.
He's looking pretty old, though.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't have to be, it would be more cerebral than Indiana Jones.
Right. Right. He doesn't have to be that active. You've got, the fun part would be actually to go the completely different direction than what we were talking about earlier, and just cast all the professors and all the grad students and all the pilots and the ship's captains as great actors. And top-notch A1 actors, and then just kill them off one by one. Yeah, just let it go. Ed Norton would be a good part in this.
You can sometimes waste an actor in a small part, because like when Godzilla came out, the actress who played the assistant to the Japanese guy is a fairly well-known British actress, and she really didn't have much to do.
Right.
So it's like you were wasting a great actor for that role.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a lot of fun with it though. You could make it like an all-star Friday the 13th, where people just start getting killed off.
Well, you remember the old joke they used to do on Police Squad?
Oh, it's been so long.
You used to open everything with special guest star Lauren Green, and he's killed in like 1 second.
Right.
There was another movie, horror movie, I can't think of the name of it, but it would actually, on screen, it would introduce the character's name at the beginning of the movie, and it said something about, it introduced this one guy, really heroic-looking guy, likely to last throughout the whole movie, and then he's killed like 30 seconds later. It was pretty funny. I wish I could think of the name of that movie, because it was actually scary, too, as well as some funny parts. All right, so I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the consensus, I think, is that we don't need an R rating to do a good Mountains of Madness movie. And Del Toro would probably do a good job. And I'll say it again, I think people are concerned about the wrong things. I think they're concerned about the R rating versus PG-13, and they're concerned about Tom Cruise, when I feel like what we should be concerned about is the screenwriter. And being adapted from the novella to the big screen.
Right.
That's the concern. So
I agree.
All right. Well, tomorrow, as usual, we've got our usual Sunday show at 6 o'clock Eastern. For those who don't know, sorry?
It's Joe's birthday.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Happy birthday, Joe. I wrote on his wall. Joe's still on the mend, but everybody go to Joe's page and wish him happy birthday if you haven't done that already. Joe Pulver.
And if you're looking for a new great Joe Pulver story, by the Children of Old Leech.
Absolutely.
Which has a lot of other great authors besides Joe, but it's one of his best stories in there.
And for those who do not know, I guess yesterday C.J. Henderson passed away. So really, really bad news there. I'll post a link tomorrow. Someone emailed me and asked me to post a link to a fundraiser for his funeral costs and everything, so I will definitely do that tomorrow. And I guess it's kind of up in the air whether the show tomorrow is about C.J. Henderson. Obviously, we'll definitely talk about him no matter what. But I put it out there that if anyone who knew him personally wants to be on the show tomorrow, they're more than welcome. Or anyone that's just been touched by his, books and everything, you're welcome too. But I haven't got a lot of response. But maybe that's something that'll happen in a couple of weeks. So anyway, we are definitely, of course, having a show tomorrow at 6 Eastern, and I'm sure we'll find something to talk about. So.
Yeah. Maybe I'll give away a copy of Steampunk Cthulhu tomorrow night.
Sounds great.
I got my copies. Woohoo!
That's out now, right?
Yeah. Oddly,
at least from Chaosium.
Yeah, you can get it from Chaosium. It's the best-selling book that you can't buy on Amazon.
Can't buy it on Amazon?
It's been temporarily out of stock since the day it was released.
Oh Lord!
But the ranking of the book keeps going up into really high numbers. So I don't know if they're just getting books in stock and having to ship them out almost immediately, or what?
Well, I ordered mine from them and haven't gotten anything.
Okay.
Not even a date.
Wow.
It's
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Amazon's weird right now.
Yeah, that's.
I had that problem with Scott Nicolay's collection. I ended up canceling my order and buying it at a convention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, with Scott's book and with Children of Old Leech and with Steampunk Cthulhu, you can get them all at the publishers' websites.
Right.
Actually, I linked to all of those books at Lovecraft eZines. A couple of them in the sidebar. So, if you want to buy those books, that's an easy way to find them. But I really appreciate everybody watching. We had a bunch of people watching tonight. Hope you'll watch tomorrow. We do this every Saturday night at midnight Eastern and every Sunday at 6 o'clock Eastern. So, want to say how I did not know him personally, but I want to close the show off with saying how sorry I am to hear about C.J. Henderson, and that really sucks. He sounds like he was a hell of a nice guy from everything that I've heard. So. He wrote that Teddy, for those who don't know, he wrote that Teddy London and many other books, but Teddy London series, which kind of a Lovecraftian detective, right, Rick?
Yeah.
Right.
And he did Kolchak the Night Stalker versus Cthulhu, essentially.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
He did a Teddy London versus Herbert West novel.
Which is probably going to be the last novel in the series. And ties in directly to the round robin that will be reprinted somewhere.
Yes, we're working on that. So.
Well, Rick, Pete, thanks for being here tonight, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.